Hello and welcome once again to the Evil Clones podcast.
Hello everyone.
We are closing out the first week of December, and we were going to do a podcast talking about the future of the X-Men film and television franchises, but we just couldn't get fired up about that. And besides, a word on the street is that the new trailer for X-Men Apocalypse is going to be attached to Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
So we figure, let's wait until that comes out, and then we'll have plenty to talk about there.
Yeah, I don't know exactly which trailers are guaranteed for Star Wars, but it sounds like they're definitely getting all the good ones.
Yeah, so anyway, today's topic of discussion, because we just closed out the latest National Novel Writing Month, will be the subject of young adult fiction and the films that trying to ride that wave.
Yeah, because we just got to the release of the fourth and final Hunger Games film, Mockingjay Part 2, which we just saw. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
You know. And rather interestingly, we had the process of, we saw the first three films and then read the trilogy of books together.
Yeah.
And then we saw the fourth film.
Yeah, so we had a very different experience with that film than we did with the other three.
Yeah.
So I found that I was surprised how much was cut from the book as they translated the plot to the film.
Yeah, it may not have been that much. Actually, it may have just felt like certain quieter sections were more substantial when we were reading them.
Yeah.
Like, there's, at the beginning of the film, when Katniss is talking to President Coin, and she says, I want to go to the Capitol, and she's like, well, that's very nice, but we're not ready to attack the Capitol, not until we finish in District 2. She's like, okay, then I want to go to District 2. In the book, she's like, okay, fine, but first, you gotta train.
Yeah.
You gotta finish your army training.
Yeah.
In the movie, they just skip that part.
Yeah, and her and Joanna go through this whole, training montage.
Yeah.
That goes for, a chapter or two.
Yeah.
Before they go to District 2. And then in District 2, the whole sequence feels like maybe 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
You got to have Gwendolyn Christie there for all of 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then no more of her. That's kind of like a bit of a letdown. But overall, I thought that, the movie delivered on the story. And if you didn't like the book, you probably won't like the movie because the high points of what is in the book is what they put in the film.
They stuck to it, yeah. So if you were disappointed with the ending, you can just carry right on being disappointed with the ending because it's pretty much the same.
Yeah. But anyway, in the last few months, in lead up to National Novel Writing Month, you were working on a little project as you were cooking up a fan fiction.
Yeah.
Tell people about that.
Yeah, Douglas. I can't remember exactly when I started this, sometime early in the year. I started toying, since, Avengers is so popular, and I grew up on superhero comics and superhero team comics like the Avengers and such, my whole life. And, with all the, YA fiction that's popular and getting all adapted into films right now, I'm like, what if you could put together a team of these characters as, a sort of big crossover fic? And by the way, while I was working on this, I was casually browsing around some fanfic websites, which I don't usually do because I'm not a big fanfic reader. I couldn't find anybody who had done precisely this. I might just not have been searching for the right thing, but usually people want to cross over two properties and just throw the gang from the Maze Runner into the Hunger Games or something like that.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever, taken a whole bunch of them into one big crossover extravaganza that I could find. At least precisely what I was trying to do. So I'm like, okay, this seems like a unique idea.
Yeah.
So as I selected my roster, I started to realize I might be able to write this. Maybe I could write it for Nano. Yeah. But first I have a number of months until November. So maybe I should read all of the books as research so that I could actually write it in November.
Yeah.
So that's what I proceeded to do.
Because for the most part, we had just watched the movies.
Yeah. That was kind of what I was going by.
Yeah, which is pretty hit and miss overall. Because, you got Hunger Games, which was very successful.
Yeah.
Divergent seemed pretty popular. But a lot of the other ones haven't really found their way. Like I Number 4 and Percy Jackson didn't take off in any substantial way.
Right, yeah.
So, first, who did you pick for your team?
Okay, so the team that I selected was Katniss, of course. Katniss is the big star. She's the one that everybody reading this probably already knows, even if they haven't seen the films. And I'm like, okay, if she's there, then I got to have Triss from Divergent there as well. They're basically cohorts. They're basically spiritual cohorts already.
Yeah.
And if they're there, it feels wrong to leave out Thomas from the Maze Runner.
Right.
So yeah, throw him in there too.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, since this is a superhero team, I need people with actual superpowers. So that led me to, like you said, Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
It seemed like he would be fun. And we had seen the movie I'm Number 4. So I'm like, well, John seems pretty powerful. He would probably be a good addition to this.
Yeah.
And then I decided, okay, I need a mage of some kind. Somebody with magic powers. So I narrowed it down to Clary from the Mortal Instruments. And I just... we'll cover this later, but I just kind of assumed that, okay, she doesn't do much in that first movie that I saw. I imagine that she'll get, trained up and, be able to, slay monsters along with the rest of the gang later on in the series.
Yeah.
So I added her to the group, and so I had a team of 6, and I started playing the story with them for a while. I said, okay, so I guess I can, to keep it simple, I'll stuff them into this, I'll pluck them out of their stories and stuff them into this one facility, and I'll also have a bunch of monsters from their books. Whatever brought them to this place also brought a bunch of their monsters, and they have to fight through them and team up and figure out how they got here, and then either regain control of the facility or escape. Yeah. And then okay, so as they go, I have 3 guys and 3 girls here, so I got to pair them up. And the rule is everybody, because I've seen Clue, and there's other any number of TV dramas like this, each team has to be 1 boy and 1 girl, and each team has to be 1 person with powers and 1 person without powers.
Right. And the funny thing you found out was that the people with powers are always from the present.
That's right.
And the people without powers are usually from the future.
Yeah, so all the gang from the dystopian bombed out futures, they never have superpowers, because I guess there's probably other subcategories of YA fiction that cover that kind of thing, but I was basically just pulling from these 2 tiers, dystopian and kind of more urban fantasy sci-fi.
Yeah, but then they had a team of 6, but then you added 1 more in there.
Yeah, I said, I can't remember what prompted this, but I guess growing up with superhero comics, I've decided the magic number for a team is 7. You really need 7. So I guess, I suppose I could add a wild card. I could, find another movie, and I couldn't think of any other YA fiction movie adaptations that I'd seen. But I'm like, okay, but maybe I need someone who doesn't have a movie yet, in the interest of fairness. So, the only one of these books that I've read already is Maximum Ride. Could I add Max to this team? And I decided, might as well. It's my story.
Yeah. I was one who actually read Maximum Ride first, because for NaNoWriMo, I was cooking up another story of my own about a bunch of kids with wings on their backs, and I wanted to check out the competition. Good news is that Maximum Ride is quite different from what I had in my head. That was much more a sci-fi and more kind of a fugitive vibe going on, where they're running from mad scientists and stuff. Mine was more of the urban fantasy variety, and also I was going more of an origin story for my kids. So the only similarity was that they were all young and they all had wings. Yeah. And as far as the tone and feel of the series, it was totally different.
I mean, there were certain other superficial similarities, like the oldest member of the team and the youngest member of the team were kind of similar in your story and in that story, but I don't know, whatever. I was like, okay, I think this is different enough that we can, get by.
Yeah, so more recently I've started to read some of the Animorphs books, because you got me those for Christmas last year. That seems to me more along the lines of what I want to write for my thing.
Yeah.
So once I get more of the feel of that, I'll dig up my Kids with Wings book again and see if I can really kip that out into something I can be proud of.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things that you found out reading all of these books? Let's go over which books you did read.
Okay,
because some of these series are pretty long.
Yeah, so what we got here, we have 7 different series. I'd read 4 books in the we had read 4 books in the Maximum Ride series a few years back.
Yeah.
The first 3 are, overall, that series is just kind of okay. I didn't, it didn't really grab me a whole lot. Yeah. The first 3 books form a pretty decent trilogy, and then the 4th book is just kind of superficial. And then there's a lot more beyond that. The most recent one came out just a few months ago.
Yeah. know that in that one, I think the bombs do go off and it becomes post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Which kind of interestingly makes Max almost like at the halfway point of these two sides, where she's from the urban fantasy, but then also the Bombed-out future.
Yeah.
Kind of bridging the gap there.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm hoping to explore as we go. That Max becomes, because she's a wild card of sorts, she becomes a sort of ambassador between the two, these two groups.
Yeah. So anyway, you get them. In addition to that, you got the Hunger Games trilogy, you got the Maze Runner trilogy, and you got the Diversion trilogy.
Yeah. Now, both Maze Runner and Diversion have, like, supplemental fourth books, which I did not read. I just, read the main three because I wanted to follow the story of that character main character that I'm using. And I only wanted to use protagonists in the story. I could, find excuses to grab other characters out of those books and drop them into this thing, but that's for later.
Right.
I want just this team of 7 to be, fighting their way out of this place.
So yeah, so those 3, a maximum ride, and then you got the present day stuff.
Yeah, so there's Percy Jackson, which the main series is 5 books.
Yeah.
I read 4 of them.
Right.
And then there's the Mortal Instruments series. The main part of that is that was like a whole library of different interconnected series all set in the same universe. The main series of that is 6 books. The first 3 form a good trilogy, and then the other 3 are kind of supplemental on top of that in certain ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I only read 4 of those so far.
Right.
And then there's the Lorien Legacies, which the first is I Am Number 4. That one is, I think, 6 or 7 books and counting. It's still going.
Yeah.
The latest one also came out a few months ago.
The penultimate chapter.
Yeah. So I read 4 of those.
Okay, so the ones that were more than 3, you read the next one.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
And part of it was, I read Percy Jackson until I found, and part of it is, if you know some of these series, you know that not all of these characters survive the entire series. I don't want to give away who, if you haven't, because I don't know how many people in the world have read all the books that I just read. But I said, okay, I can't just pull everybody out after their retirement.
Yeah. You want to get them.
So yeah, if this character or that character I have to grab before their adventure is over, I have to do the same for everybody else because otherwise it's a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of reading through and trying to figure out, okay, exactly where am I going to extract these characters? I thought of, I remember with Katniss in particular, I had a couple of different options. I could have gone way late in book 3, like when they're attacking the Capitol, and I could have pulled her out of there.
Yeah.
Or I could have, I actually considered pulling her out during the Quarter Quell in book 2 when she's not completely, ravaged by PTSD.
Right.
But I ultimately decided to pull her out during the first part of book 3. If you've read it, if you've seen the movie, when they visit District 8, visit the hospital, they see the hospital get bombed, and
and Candace gives her a big speech for the airwaves,
just off the top of her head, and it's awesome. And after that, when they're flying back to District 13, that's when I kind of pluck her out.
Right. Like originally, when you conceived it, you were gonna pluck her out at the end of the Quarter Quell when she blows up the force field, but it's like she is really beat up at that point.
Yeah,
and you decided it'd be more fun together when she's fully armed and ready for battle.
Yeah. And part of it was ultimately superficial. When do these characters have the most weapons on them?
Yeah. They're ready for battle and at the height of their power.
Yeah.
At the height of their power, because apparently in the Lorien series, John's powers are still growing.
Yeah. Maybe all their powers are still growing. That's part of the hook of the series, is kind of following them, finding each other, them finding all of their. Each of them has a little treasure chest full of knickknacks, alien artifacts that they can use on their adventures, and just finding those, finding each other, and figuring out what the rest of their superpowers are.
Right.
Their superpowers are called legacies. That's why it's called the Lorien Legacies.
Yeah. So as far as which movies have we seen?
Okay, so
we've seen basically the first of each of the movies that have been made.
Yeah. Some of them crapped out after the one movie. Yeah. Like Mortal Instruments just did the one.
Yeah.
And
I Number 4 just did the one. Funny enough, we kind of went through the same process of both of those. I went to see I Number 4 and Mortal Instruments by myself in the theaters. And then when they hit DVD, I was like, dude, I gotta show you this movie. It's not a masterpiece, but there's some awesome stuff in here that you have to see.
I mean, I would have no issue with, throwing away, with the studio throwing away another $20 million on another one of these movies. I mean, who cares? They're just, I feel like we don't see enough just mid-budget movies anymore. Yeah. Everybody's going after the latest billion-dollar blockbuster. And, maybe we need something that has maybe a smaller risk and a smaller reward.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It would be nice to have not so many movies just crap out after.
I think that's probably one of the things that has drawn Hollywood to this genre in the first place. Maybe. Is that they don't have to be, hundreds of millions of dollar budgeted films. They can be more mid-budget, like a lot of stuff we got maybe in the 90s. But then they can have a much greater return on their investment if they have a huge following, like with Hunger Games, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, it started with with the Harry Potter series.
Yes.
That's probably the one we had to thank for this. Although none of these series have even come close to what the Harry Potter franchise managed to pull off.
Yeah.
Which was pretty amazing in itself, having largely the same cast throughout all 8 films.
Yeah.
And also keeping the series at a pretty consistent level of quality.
Yeah.
And managing them to deliver the goods right up until the end.
Yeah. And I suppose in franchise terms, the Twilight franchise was a successor to that. And of course, I've never seen the Twilight movies or read the books, which will surprise no one. And then the closest successor to that was probably the Hunger Games.
Yeah, that was sort of the one that was okay to like, even like before the movie came out.
Yeah,
and plus, this is actually good sci-fi, and
and it's also funny, like what we mentioned with the dystopian sci-fi and the urban fantasy sci-fi. Those dystopian ones, those always seem to get the trilogies on time. Like we got the first Maze Runner, and then the next year we got the second one, which was the Scorch Trials, and I'm pretty sure they're going to do the third one, which is the Death Cure. At the same time next year, and then same thing with the Divergent movies. We got the first one, the second one. By the way, I've only seen the first Divergent. I didn't bother to see the second one because I, just heard bad things. I'm like, I'll just read the damn book.
It was kind of a bummer because from what I had heard at the time, the first one actually sticks with the book overall, but the second one, even though the first one was really successful, the second one kind of did not stick to the book, which seems to have been to its detriment.
Yeah.
And then we got the Maze Runner, which I remember I saw a review talking about that when the first Hunger Games movie was like the most expensive, cheap-looking movie you'd ever seen. I'd say the opposite could be said about the Maze Runner, which was like maybe $50 million or less for both films, but they both look like huge films.
Yeah,
there was Westball directing both films, and it looks like he's going to do the third one as well.
Good for him.
So looks like he's showing everybody how it's done, how to really make your budget count.
Yeah, plus make no mistake, it isn't just the movies that we've mentioned that stalled out after one film. They keep cranking these out, trying to find whatever movie is going to catch, like the Hunger Games did. They made Inkheart, which only did one movie. They did frigging Vampire Academy,
or Vampire's Assistant.
Exactly, yeah.
Did what was the one with the casters and in the South?
The Beautiful Creatures.
Beautiful Creatures, yeah. That seemed rather silly and
yeah.
So you could have considered her for your mage.
I did, but I'm like, no. Clary and the Shadowhunters seem more combat ready. That was what I decided.
Yeah. Also, the Shadowhunters were, since the movie didn't take off, they're going to get their series on ABC Family early next year. So hopefully that will be a more effective adaptation.
Hopefully, I don't know.
How are they as adaptations? I'm going to take them one by one.
The one that follows the movie that follows the book the least, and also the movie that I didn't even bother to watch all the way through, is definitely Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Lightning Thief.
Yeah, certainly got the sense that the earlier books are definitely like the early Harry Potter books.
Yeah, they're for kids. Yeah,
yeah. in terms of tone, content as well. Would you say?
I suppose so.
So it was definitely clear with that first Percy Jackson film that the studio wanted the next Harry Potter franchise, even getting Chris Columbus, who directed the first two films of there.
Yeah.
But they did a lot of things that suggested that that's what they wanted, but they didn't really have the patience to nurture this into something that could really stand on its own, and
or just trust the source material and be faithful to that, like they were with the frigging Harry Potter movies that they're trying to copy.
Yeah, the first two of those films were slavishly close to the source material.
Yeah,
whereas the first Percy Jackson film was trying to be Harry Potter again,
basically,
rather than being slavishly close to the first Percy Jackson book.
And in the end, I didn't even bother to watch how they limped their way to a second film adapted from the second book 3 years later, which is never a good sign.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they had budget cuts or something, but I didn't even bother to watch that movie either. I know that they had to recast some characters because they couldn't get the original actors back. The guy played by Pierce Brosnan in the first movie is now played by Anthony Stewart Head in the second one. And okay, we need to introduce some of the characters that we technically should have done the first time, but now we'll bring them in to bog this movie down even more.
Yeah, so it was even if it's close to the book and overall better, it's just kind of too little too late.
Yeah, maybe. But that was just the impression I got. Like I said, we didn't watch it.
Yeah.
So let me just go through the list real quick. What order are we these in? I decided, okay, if I'm going to do this project, because I had read, except for Maximum Ride, which I only added to this project later, I had read none of these books.
Right.
Okay. I had seen most of the films that existed, but I hadn't read any of these books, and I knew I had a lot of work cut out for me. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to read the first one from each series first, just to get a feel for everybody, and then I'll see where I go from there. So I read Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief first, because I'm like, okay, I'll read the least faithful adaptation first, and then The Hunger Games, and then Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, then The Maze Runner, and then Divergent, and then I Am Number 4. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And by the way, all of those were audiobooks.
Right.
Okay, this project was mostly done through audiobooks.
Yeah.
So we're discovering Audible.com. We're discovering a local library where they have them all on CDs and such. So that was very interesting. And for one thing, I found that, okay, the Percy Jackson audiobooks I didn't like at all. I don't remember the guy that got to read those, but I really didn't like how he did it. He couldn't do the voices of the different characters. The way he just read the narration just sounded, killed all of the tension and all the interest that I had. And even if there was a part that I think I would have liked reading, it just sounded terrible coming out of his mouth. And I just okay, from here on, Percy Jackson, I'm not doing any more audiobooks. I'm only reading it, in good old-fashioned paperback.
Right.
And I also decided the same thing with the Lorien Legacies series. The guy that got to read I'm Number 4 isn't as bad, but it's kind of the same thing. He can't do the voices. He doesn't sound like, John is supposed to sound, because he sounds too old. The guy who reads Percy Jackson sounds too young. Mm-hmm. So I mostly read those on paperback as well. So from there, I'm like, okay, so I can focus on each story closely. I'm going to try and pick one series and read that to the end before I move on to the next one. So I'm like, okay, I'll read Insurgent and Allegiant next. That's the Divergent Part 1 and 2. And then I read
2 and 3, yeah.
2 and 3. And then I read the next 2 Hunger Games books. And then I read the next 2 Maze Runner books. And that was pretty good. I read, 6 books in 2 months.
Awesome.
So I got the dystopian books out of the way. And the reason I went with those first is because I found all those audiobooks at the library. Yeah. That was why. Mostly it was a matter of convenience. And then okay, so now it's time to get serious. And I said, okay, we're at October at this point. I only had a month left before we started writing. So I have a lot more books to go through. It's time to start doubling up. So I'm like, okay, we'll read the Mortal Instruments, which I mostly did through Audible.com, which is pretty good. And then I'll read those on audio. And at the same time, I'll start reading the other books, the Percy Jackson books, in text form. And then because they're different formats, I'll be able to keep them straight, which actually really worked.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And a part of it is because they're very different kind of stories. Mortal Instruments is more like the Vampire Diaries,
Yeah.
or like the TV version of Vampire Diaries. I
Right.
don't really know what the books are like. Whereas Percy Jackson is more, swinging, adventure stories and the fans know that the books do get darker as the series goes on, kind of like the Harry Potter books did. And then item number 4, the Lorien Legacies, a little more like Smallville, I guess.
Right. Which,
Smallville, if that was a fugitive story.
Right. So it seems almost apt that it was Alfred Goff and Miles Millar who wrote the film adaptation.
Yeah, I guess so.
Although they really kind of blanded it up, if I recall.
Yeah, it was a little bland already. I suppose they could have. If they could have added something to jazz it up. There's parts of the book where, while John is going through his teachings about his home planet, they show like these battle scenes with the evil aliens, the Mogadorians, and if we could have seen more of that, that I think would have added a lot more to the movie. Because when they get to the end and they have the big fight at the high school, that's the best part of the movie.
Yes. Oh my god.
So it's like, could we make more of the movie like this?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Or like another thing that they cut out of that film was the explanation for why the kids had to be killed in order.
Yeah. The explanation for the title, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, how is it exactly?
It's almost sort of like in Harry Potter where they have whatever that charm is where, the bad guys can't find you as long as the designated secret keeper doesn't tell the bad guy where you are.
Right.
It's sort of like that, but more lethal. When they arrived on Earth, there were 9 of them, as it says on the back of every one of these books, and they had a charm put on them. They actually call it that, a charm.
Yeah,
that
it's
says,
basically magic.
If they are killed out of order, then whatever you do to the alien you're trying to hurt will hurt you instead. If I walk up to you and it's not your turn, and
if you're trying to kill number 5, number 3 is still alive.
Yeah, and you try and shoot number 5 in the head, then the bullet will just go through your head instead. Yeah. That's why they have to be killed in order, and also it's why they have to stay apart, because if any two of them get together, then the charm is broken and it's a free for all.
Right, and all that not in the film. Which is too bad, because then it kind of like, wait, why do they have to kill them in order?
Yeah, they just kind of
left up in the air.
Yeah.
So anyway, where were we? You read?
Okay, so then we're into October. I read Mortal Instruments, City of Ashes, and Percy Jackson, The Sea of Monsters. That's book 2 of each of those, and I burned through those really quick. I gotta say, those were good. And then moved on to book 3 of each of those, Mortal Instruments, City of Glass, and Percy Jackson, The Titan's Curse. And then I'm like, okay, I got to get back to the Lorien Legacies, so I read The Power of 6, which is book 2 of that. And then I read book 4 of Mortal Instruments, which is City of Fallen Angels. And then that's when November started, and I had to start writing. So while I was writing, I was also reading the 4th Lorien... right? The 4th or the 3rd?
The 3rd, I think.
The 3rd, The Rise of 9, and then Percy Jackson, Battle of the Labyrinth. I'm pretty sure I read the 4th one of those, but I can't remember anymore.
Wow. They all kind of blur together when there's this
many.
Yeah.
When I'm just blazing through them at high speed.
Yeah, so based on what you read, which one of these series did you actually like the most in book form?
The Hunger Games.
Hunger Games by far?
Yeah, the best written... best writing style, and I thought most compelling, and overall the best.
Yeah, cool. I also found something interesting with the Maze Runner series when we went to watch the second film.
Yeah, that was an interesting relationship I've developed with that story.
Yeah, so we watched the first film together.
Yes.
Last year, and then we started reading the books.
And then I read the book.
Yeah.
I read the first book, and I also decided that I think the book is better than the film because the film changed a few things that suddenly in the film don't make sense now. Like, in the film, the maze is kind of in an enclosed area, but there's sky above them. So, like, why don't they just build ladders and climb out, as they said in the, the How It Should Have Ended video?
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, they explain that because it's not really open sky. It's, it's in a domed area underground. The sky is artificial.
Right.
That's why.
Okay.
So they explain that in the book. So there's that. There were a couple of things that I thought in the film were improvements having to do with Teresa. In the movie, she shows up in the box much later, so she's not just sitting around, kind of in a coma state for a while, waiting to become important.
Right.
No, she shows up much later, and also by having her show much later, I thought introduced something of a mystery, because I was like, okay, was she supposed to arrive here all along at this moment, or did something we did provoke this?
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, it's like, oh no, this was planned all along because it's the very next day.
Right. Okay.
So there's not much intrigue there.
So you read the first book, and then you read the second book.
Yeah.
And then we saw the second movie, The Scorch Trials.
Yes.
And I was walking out, I was like, so what of that was in the book?
And like...
and you were like...
And I'm like, not much. I mean, it would take less time to list the things that they did not change.
Right.
Like, Minho does get struck by lightning. That part happens.
Okay.
But beyond that, most of the stuff in the second book they threw out and incorporated a lot of stuff from book 3, and also just kind of made it a more general kind of, running through the zombie wasteland.
Right,
kind of movie. There's probably some video games that, they're basically running through too. A lot of it felt like a big video game. And here's the weird part. I actually like the Scorch Trials movie better.
Right. That's probably why they changed so much, because they didn't like the book all that well. So they basically turned it into The Death Cure Part 1.
Maybe. And so... I know that might be a controversial opinion, but if they announce that we're splitting The Death Cure into 2 films, it's a total cash grab. They do not need to do that. There's not enough material left to fill 2 films, I promise you.
Right.
So really, and one thing, like at the end of the Scorch Trials book, they fight these robot monsters with like blades on their hands and stuff. And we never saw those in the movie, so that was a little disappointing. And also the cranks, basically zombies, are much different in the film. They're more like your generic kind of 28 Days Later zombies, but they also they've kind of merged with the landscape, so they're sort of like tree zombies.
Yeah, that was pretty freaky.
Yeah, so that's the visual thing. They're not really like that in the books. But honestly, it's been I finished those books so long ago. I'm not sure I remember them very well.
Right. Yeah.
So I managed to read book 2 and 3 pretty close together, and I thought they were okay. I do hope the third movie is good.
Yeah. Speaking of reading them so long ago, there's some of the Maxim Ride books.
Yeah.
Which mentioned that I was reading it to check out the competition for my own book, but it was weird reading a book series that I wasn't even a fan of, and getting that deep into it.
Yeah.
Because I read all the way through book 4, which, by the way, book 4 blows. It's straight up. It's, okay, I don't mind sanctimonious environmentalism. I just can't stand it when it is a substitute for having an actual story.
Yeah, I mean, the Percy Jackson books have little of that, but there's still a story there.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the things that annoyed me about the first Percy Jackson book too. It's not as explicit later on, but it pops up occasionally.
Yeah. It's like when you were working out the backstory of your fic, you're like, okay, I'll just pluck out Max from the beginning of book 4. Later, you're like, maybe I'll pluck her out from the end of book 4. I'm like, it doesn't matter because nothing happens in book 4. It's so uneventful. They just kind of go down to an expedition to the Arctic, do some science stuff.
What is it called? The Final Warning, I think?
Final Warning, yeah. There's some bad guy stuff, but not really. There's not even much of a main conflict driving it.
Yeah.
They're not on the run anymore, and the book feels like it's trying to find a reason to exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, okay, if you ever read the Max and Ride series, just skip the 4th book. It's not worth it.
Yeah. I don't know what happens in book 5. We never did read that.
I hear book 5 is way better. It gets the series back on track.
Okay,
but,
cool.
It's alright. I mean, I'm surprised that they never made that movie, because I remember years ago they announced that Catherine Hardwicke, who did the first Twilight film, had signed on to direct the film version.
Yeah.
Another funny thing I found out with Max and Ride was that the first book of all the first books in these series That one is by far the shortest.
Huh. It's also very easy to find the abridged versions of these, online and.
But like, I mean, even unabridged, it's way short.
Yeah.
The ending feels somewhat arbitrary. There is a shocking death of a major character who comes back in the next book, by the way. But it felt like, well, they're still on the run and not a whole lot has changed.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, this is the last page and, pick up the next book to see what happens next. And
a lot of book series are like that, by the way, where you just, pick up the next book. That's funny. I think I've read more books just this year than I've ever read any other year of my life, which was an interesting experience. And I've read a few things. I'm okay if some books never get movies. Some books are fine as books. Yeah. Sometimes it's good to have sometimes reading is more of an intimate experience, and it's good to have more kind of, it feels more exclusive being part of the audience of that series. Yeah. You know what I mean? And another thing, what you said about, getting that far into a series you're not a fan of, sometimes I felt that way through this entire project, reading all of these.
Yeah.
There was a bit of, while I enjoyed a lot of these, there was a bit of detachment because I was basically really doing it for research.
Yeah.
I didn't really care, if the ending of, of like The Hunger Games or if the ending of Divergent was less than satisfactory because I wasn't really invested in that. I was more invested in, okay, exactly what kind of a character is, Candace, what kind of a character is Thomas at this point? Is this a good point to pull them out of the story and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And what weapons do they have on there? What do those weapons do? And so that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That was a particular sticking point you said with them on the Moral Instruments because like you said, you were expecting Clary to be ready for battle.
I made an assumption about just going by what I knew from the movies. Basically, I had to make a few assumptions. I'm like, okay, I need a mage, somebody who's ready for combat, and I just kind of assumed that Clary, who doesn't do much in the first book, she mostly lets the rest of the gang do all the fighting. I figured, okay, obviously she'll be trained up as a badass shadow hunter in a timely fashion. And she'll be ready to join the action in my story. Yeah. But I'm 4 books into that series, and that hasn't really happened yet. She started training in book 4 after the main trilogy's over. Yeah. But even there's a scene where she has a fight with a monster, and she's the whole thing is about how she's not yet trained for this, and she only lasts just long enough for one of the other shadow hunters to show up and save her. And I'm hoping there's a point where, in book 5, there might not be. I read over the plot summary already because I needed to do the research. I'm hoping there's a point where she goes to her mom and says, "Mom, I need to train. I need to train now because this is going to keep happening. And I'm not going to wait for the council to appoint a teacher for me. I'm going to I'm going to ask whoever is available. And I'm going to ask you to train me sometimes, but this needs to happen." Yeah. I don't know if that happens. Maybe it doesn't. But I may have to pull her out, after the end of her series if I have to, because I've planned out this story with too much detail already to like swap her out for another character. Yeah.
Here. There's another little fun quirk you had in there. Yeah. Where there are actually a handful of actors who have appeared across multiple films in these series.
Just by sheer volume. Yeah. I mean, the younger characters, the main characters are usually these young up-and-comers, and then the older adults are usually the big stars. Yeah, exactly. And that's consistent in pretty much all these series, except maybe I'm number 4, right? Because there just aren't many adults there. Yeah. Unless you count like Timothy Olyphant and Kevin Durand as big stars, which I don't really.
Even Kevin Durand was also in The Moral Instruments.
That's right. Yeah, he's one of the bad guys there too. Yeah. So as far as National Novel Writing Month, this is probably the most I've really gotten into it. There's really 2 kinds of people participating in NaNoWriMo: people who plan out with very detailed outlines and everything, and people who just dive in with nothing, and they call them pantsers because they fly by the seat of their pants. Yeah, I was in the first category this time, and I really got into it more than I've ever participated in Nano, because every other time I've done it, I just used it to work on screenplays. This time I'm like, okay, I need to broaden my horizons. I need to write something in novel form this time. Yes, I'm reading all these novels. I need to write this thing as a novel, not as a screenplay, because that's a crapshoot.
Exactly.
So it's very interesting. Like as I get, and I haven't gone back and revised it. Just very little if I happen to find a typo as I'm looking over it again. But I got about 26,500 words or so. Right. And usually they say, the goal is 50,000 words. If I finish this thing, I predict it'll probably be around 60,000.
Right.
A little bit extra there. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if we're like a week into December and I haven't really added much to it. So I don't know how long I'll put this on the back burner or if I'll try and get back into writing it again. Maybe I'll try and do that soon while I have some momentum here.
Yeah.
And also there's a question of how many more of these books am I going to read to do research.
There's plenty of stuff you planned out for this book. That,
yes.
Plenty of scenes that you could still write.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fairly simple where, each of them just wakes up in this facility and runs into a monster from somebody else's book. Then they run into one of the other heroes, and then they fight another monster together. And, just with each of them, that's about as far as I've gotten. And then just as they compare notes, like, okay, where are you from? I'm from Pan Am. Where are you from? Well, I'm from Long Island.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so I'm looking forward to getting more into that. And, as this team coalesces and they work on unraveling the mystery, and they run into the bigger and badder monsters of everybody's series as they figure out what's really going on and what forces actually brought them here. And that's where we get into some of the original elements that I had to make up because I'm basically dropping characters from 7 different series into an 8th series that I invented from scratch. So that was interesting too, trying to develop these original characters.
Yeah, I remember there was one exchange between John and Triss.
Yeah.
Saying where you're from, and she says, I'm from Chicago.
Yeah, interestingly, later in the Lorien Legacies, one of the characters has a lair in Chicago, so I can have John say, "Oh, I just came from there," and she's like, "Really? What's going on with this, that, and the faction list and everything?" And he's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" So there's a version of that exchange with almost every pair. So I've paired John up with Triss, our guy with superpowers and girl from the future. I've paired Percy up with Katniss because I think because those two were the easiest to write in what I've written so far. I've found they have a great kind of chemistry with her being from this kind of dark and gritty and scary wartime future with killing of children on national television.
Yeah. And
Percy's adventures are more breezy and there's an element of wish fulfillment to Percy Jackson's stories of, I get to, fight monsters with a sword, and it's really cool. By the way, Percy Jackson, that's the only series that when you go to the library, every library I found, that one's always in the kids section, while everybody else is in the young adult section. Yeah. And even as the books get darker, as we discussed, this is still a world where when you cut the head off a Hydra, a donut shop opens up somewhere. Yeah.
So, and then you had Thomas and Clary.
Yeah.
For your third group.
Yeah, the time was with the one guy without powers and the one girl with, until I brought in Max later, and then she hooks up with John and Triss. And then also just with that plan, I had to figure out, okay, what floor, let's say there's 6 floors to this place, and they have to wake up on adjacent floors. I could have drawn a map, but it was all written out.
Yeah.
I may draw a map to try to figure out the finer points later on as this thing gets more complicated. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also, and this will come in during revisions, I would like to, as the POV shifts around to each of these protagonists, I want to try and capture kind of the writing style of each of the series. With the Mortal Instruments, Cassandra Clare writes in sort of a poetic, flowery style of describing, the flowing of the colors and stuff like that. And then Percy Jackson is more breezy, Percy is, a very immature and impulsive, starts off as a 12-year-old boy, and then by the 4th book he's 15, and so there's kind of a breezy style there. And then in Maze Runner it's very dark and gritty, and there's a lot of descriptions of when Thomas is feeling like crap, they describe that very specific, he felt like, a bunch of, crushed ice had been hammered into his ears, that kind of thing. There's all kinds of stuff like that. So I want to try and capture that with each character's point of view. And I'm hoping that somebody who, because Because there's probably not very many people, if I publish this on like fanfic sites or whatever, there's probably not very many people who have read all of these stories. I'm hoping that you can like jump on, even if you've read one or two of them, and I'll be able to follow what's going on. And especially like, let's say you've read the Percy Jackson books, and you read Thomas's scene, and he runs into this dude, and I describe he had a gray muscle shirt and camouflage pants. And if you've read the Percy Jackson books, you're like, I know what that means. I know which monster he's just run into.
Yeah.
So just try and capture those details.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun as we go. And yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing with this project.
Cool, yeah. I think as far as fan fiction is concerned, there are a lot of like fan scripts and stories that I need to get out of my system so that I can get back to coming up with some new original ideas. Like, I hope
you're keeping all those original ideas written down somewhere.
Yeah, I get like a Superman when I want to write. I still want to do like a Batman pilot, which I tried to write when last time I did Nano. My pilot script for a Batman show, which I keep on going on about how great Batman would be as a TV show. There's even like a Justice League movie idea that I came up with, which is going to be really insane and complicated and have way too many characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I gotta get that stuff, written out so that I can come up with something that I can actually sell as my own.
Yeah.
Let's quickly wrap it up with what are some of the other books we've managed to squeeze in along with these my young adult series.
It's like on top of these, we're also reading some other stuff like together because we discovered we have to drive around so much now because we live in Los Angeles. So
yes.
Sometimes you get tired of the radio, or you get tired of all the music CDs you burned. You want to read some audiobooks. You want to absorb stuff that way. So we discovered, using Audible.com and audiobooks you check out from the library and other stuff.
So one of the ones we read was we've been making our way through the Inheritance cycle,
right?
By Christopher Paolini.
Yeah, like Oregon. Like hey, there's another one that crapped out after one film.
Yeah. Oh man, the movie is so bad. But I actually started reading Eldest years ago, like right before. Like I read the first book before the first film came out, and I started reading the second book soon after, and then I stopped about a quarter of the way in. Yeah. And then finally this year I grabbed the audiobook and listened to that. Finally finished it that way. And then we read the third book, Brysinger, together
in the car,
which was actually quite good.
Yes.
So eventually we'll get back to doing and wrap it up with the fourth book, Inheritance.
Yeah. So we also discovered the October Day series, which is more relatively new. Yeah. And is sort of a supernatural gumshoe kind of series.
Yeah, by Seanan McGuire. She's got a really cool style that is a really great world building going on. Yeah. And this almost like a noirish, a private eye stuff mixed in with like magic and fairies and elves and stuff. It's the structure of the October Day books that we read so far are actually very familiar. Yeah. The first book has a lot of parallels with Jessica Jones, for instance, where you got this sort of washed up PI who has been traumatized before, but then is sort of a coaxed back into the job. And then the second book, which we're in the middle of right now, is sort of turning into this. There's this facility that there's like a killer on the loose, and it's picking off people one by one, and Toby Day's got to figure out who it is before somebody else dies, kind of thing. Yeah.
We also read The Martian. By Andy Weir. I felt so pleased with that because what I said about how it feels cool being part of that exclusive club. Yeah, we got to read that book before the movie came out.
Like I first heard about it when I saw the trailer for the film, and I found out that there was this. Not only was it a book, but it was this like really popular and really acclaimed book. Like the more I read it, I was like, I have to read this right now. Yeah, I know I'm in the middle of several books already, but I have to read this right now. So I downloaded Audible. And then we just like couldn't put it down. It was so good. Yeah.
So is that when we discovered World War Z? Yes, at the library. The audiobook is a huge production.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they got like a big all-star cast. Yeah. To tell all the various stories recounted in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I highly recommend that one too. I've been making my way through the Animorphs books. Like I said, I'm on to book 3 now. I probably won't, but I feel like I should finish the first 5 that you got me for Christmas last year before Christmas this year comes around.
Yeah.
I mean they are short books, relatively speaking. So, but I'm halfway through the first 5. So maybe I can pick things up from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, are there any books floating out there that we're hoping to let's take a look at?
Let's see. I still got a few of those, from those series that we discussed.
Yeah, confirm that you read the first 3 of the Lorien Legacies.
Yeah, 3.
Book 4.
Not 4. I read the first 3 books from that series.
Yeah,
and I just checking the plot summaries. I actually started just spoiling myself on a couple of those books because I'm like, okay, I need to know what happens next because we're in the middle of Nano and I need to know what I'm dealing with here. Yeah. So I spoiled myself on the next Mortal Instruments and the next Lorien Legacies. So, but I still want to read those and get a more clear feel for those.
Yeah. So read more books is what we're saying.
Yeah.
There's one more that we really should read, and that's Ready Player One because they're making that movie.
Yeah.
And I want to read that before I start seeing trailers for the film. And so we that will be one of the next big ones once we find the time for it.
Okay.
So yeah, read more books, kids, and next time we will most likely be talking. Well, let's see here. We might be talking about X-Men because we'll have seen the new trailer, and then we'll have that discussion there. Or we might maybe even discuss Star Wars because that's where we will see that trailer.
Hey, yeah, maybe.
So yeah, we will see you next time, and follow us on social media. And good night.
Good night.